Welcome back to Paul's Tech News. Be gladdened, my friends, for I bring tidings of hope in these dark times. In just 3 weeks, we shall bear witness to the glorious celebration of computer hardware that is Computex, where myriad manufacturers will give birth to brand new tech so that we may be unshackled from the outdated components of yesteryear and have new to buy. But the throes of labor have already begun in the tech world, and I suppose if I'm riding this analogy to the end, the water has already broken, and hence this week's stories issued forth. RTX 5080 and 5090 rumors, new AMD CPUs with silly names, and Intel Arrow Lake leaks. Sometimes I think I get a little too visceral with these intros, but I'm sure Joe chose some tasteful imagery to complement it. On with the tech news.
Excellent!
Today's video is brought to you by Thermaltake's EX series fans, featuring magnetic force connectors that can daisy chain fans together to simplify installation and cable management. CT120EX fans feature solid all-around performance and a touch of tasteful RGB lighting. The SwaFan EX series revolutionized case fans by adding swappable fan blades, and the ToughFan EX Pro series sports best-in-class high static pressure for use with radiators and an aggressive all-black design. And all of them feature larger magnetic force connectors for easy wiring. For more on the EX series fans from Thermaltake, click the sponsor link in the video description. Rumors continue to swirl about the possible launch of NVIDIA's Blackwell RTX 50 series gaming GPUs, starting on Tuesday when preeminent Twitter leaker Kopite7Kimi replied to a Tech Power-Up article about only the 5090 launching in 2024. Not tour, says Kopite, presumably meaning not true, although it could also be a typo of not sure. But RTX 5080 should be released first, leaves no room for misinterpretation. Then on Thursday, a response article on benchlife.info indicated that NVIDIA is currently testing 4 configurations for Blackwell desktop GPUs, with power draw targets ranging from 250 watts all the way up to 600 watts, which is not too surprising given the current limits of the RTX 40 series. But this would align with the other rumors of more than one SKU being prepared for launch. And since so much of this is based on unverifiable Twitter leaks, might as well throw one more onto the pile. This reply from XPEA GPU stating quite confidently that they'll be announced at the same time, the 5080 and the 5090, and launched within a few weeks of one another. WCCF Tech seems to think this announcement will occur when NVIDIA hosts a special GeForce event, which will be teased a few days prior, as has been the case with previous launches, which isn't too unreasonable, although many are still holding out hope that Jensen will lay the RTX 50 series details on us at NVIDIA's totally not Computex affiliated pre-Computex keynote on June 2nd, Computex Eve. The RTX 5080 shooting first theory is an interesting one though, and if true, it could be an indication that NVIDIA is attempting to provide PC gamers with some level of actual availability this year, as the 5080 is expected to be based on the Blackwell GB203 die, which is smaller, meaning better yields and more dies per wafer. There's further speculation that's based on even less evidence that NVIDIA might make the RTX 5090 a dual-chip GPU, and that could delay it to 2025 when TSMC is expected to significantly ramp up their CoWoS capacity. But I think we should leave it at this. The buzz does seem to indicate that NVIDIA will be announcing and possibly launching the RTX 50 series this summer or fall, and the RTX 5080 could very well be on offer. For now, we'll have to wait until more official info comes to light so we can separate rumor from reality. We're also anticipating a new desktop platform and family of CPUs from Intel later this year, codenamed Arrow Lake S, although it's likely going to be a Q3 or Q4 launch, so don't expect too many details at Computex. The latest rumors on this also come from benchlife.info, and if true, we could be looking at the new CPU naming convention for the next generation, reducing the primary value from 4 or 5 digits down to 3. Which Intel will probably claim as a 40% improvement in efficiency. But here it is, the typical trio of K-SKU processors will still lead the pack, with the flagship Core Ultra 9 285K with 24 cores, the Core Ultra 7 265K with 20 cores, and the Core Ultra 5 245K with 14 cores. According to rumors, there will still be performance P cores and efficient E cores, but hyper-threading might be done away with, which is a bold move given how long Intel has championed simultaneous multi-threading technology. The K-SKUs have 125 watt TDPs, so there are also 1, 2, 3 non-K variants referenced at 65 watts, 2 F SKUs without integrated graphics that might be Ultra 5 and Ultra 7 tier chips, and finally 5 low-power 35-watt T SKUs. Intel is doing many things the same way with their next-gen CPUs, but they're mixing up the formula a lot too, and not just with the names. One must assume that they wouldn't make decisions like killing hyperthreading or aiming for lower clock speeds, 5.5 GHz peak for the Ultra 9 285K, again per rumors, unless they knew the chips could make up for it in other areas. There are also many remaining questions about clock speeds, power limits, voltages, DDR5 speeds, and whether Intel can re-establish and enforce a baseline out-of-the-box profile for motherboard settings that will eliminate the instability woes they've experienced with their current generation of CPUs. Just make sure your new CPUs work, Intel, and we'll all be a lot happier. If you think Intel's new names for their CPUs are awkward, you're right, but AMD is once again providing them with some stiff competition if the info posted by ASUS on Tuesday is true. Credit to Harukaze5719 on Twitter for spotting this Asus VivoBook S16 OLED product listing, which says the notebook ships with an as-yet unknown AMD processor, the Ryzen AI 9 HX170, which appears to be one of AMD's upcoming Zen 5-based Strix Point mobile chips. So AMD has been adding NPUs for AI processing to many of their new chips, and while the actual application of such hardware still hasn't been demonstrated to me in a satisfactory way, at least for at-home use by a typical person not running a server farm, AI is often just about hype, and so AMD appears to be hyping up the AI capabilities of their new CPUs by putting AI right there in the name. But just as Intel did away with the I in their CPU name, only to replace it with Ultra, which uses up more letters and takes longer to say, AMD has both reduced our ability to easily say their product names while simultaneously making them look like they'd be more at home on a car's license plate. They even seem to be copycatting Intel's 3-numeral naming scheme for their new CPUs, because I can't see any other reason for the switch. Except they forgot to one-up Intel by making their number 1 higher, which would have made their CPUs that much faster as well. Missed opportunity there. And AMD, if you really wanted to combine Ryzen and AI in your product's name, the answer is right there. Ryzen CPUs. Just swap the Y for AI. Although it would kind of look like Ryzen CPUs. AMD Ryzen CPUs. Sounds delicious, and still way better than the Ryzen AI 9 HX170. Sometimes the tech news comes at you fast, and so we must be just as fast with tech briefs. The laptop SO-DIMM memory standard has been around since 1997, and it's finally time for a changeover. The new solution debuting this week is LPCAMM2, or Low Power Consumption Attached Memory Module 2, which promises a smaller footprint, upgradability, and repairability, as iFixit demonstrated that even the compression connector beneath the module is replaceable. The only downside for now is speeds and pricing are initially lower and higher, respectively, than you'd prefer, seeing that it's $330 for Crucial's 64 gig module. That's almost Apple tier RAM price gouging. Almost. We're still waiting patiently for Intel's 2nd-gen Battlemage GPUs to debut, so it's interesting to already hear news of their 3rd-gen Celestial architecture. But according to Prakhar Verma on Twitter, that's exactly what Panther Lake will ship with. Panther Lake is the code name for mobile CPUs coming in 2025 at the earliest, but they'll apparently be paired up with Celestial-class iGPUs featuring Xe3 cores, or 3rd-gen Xe cores. Also per the rumor, the Xe3 iGPU is 40% faster than Xe2, but that could simply be based on the core configuration having 40% more cores. It does sound like good news though that Celestial is still on track. VESA unveiled a new set of standards for classifying HDR displays on Tuesday, dubbed DisplayHDR 1.2, which includes new luminance, color gamut, and color accuracy requirements that should make it tougher for any old off-the-shelf panel to get slapped with a DisplayHDR 400 sticker. No new tiers are being introduced, but specs and requirements are now tighter, making the certification more meaningful. It's especially nice that 10-bit or 8-bit plus FRC and wide color gamut support is now required across all the DisplayHDR spec levels. So if you're display shopping and you want HDR, look for that 1.2 certification. PCI Express 5.0 sure is fast, but you know what's faster? PCIe 6.0. It is so fast, in fact, that when connected devices attempt to saturate a by-16 connection, which peaks at 121 gigabytes per second of throughput, they overheat. And so Phoronix has been developing a Linux driver that can automatically downclock the 16 GHz PCIe connection, or even reduce the number of lanes in order to keep connected devices like GPU arrays from cooking themselves. So naturally the follow-up question is, when we home enthusiasts will also gain access to hardware melting PCIe 6.0 technology. I'll probably just run my system with the side panel off and a fan pointed at it like I did in college. So it turns out that when the ASUS ROG Ally price dropped back in March, they might have had this in mind, a new Ally, but not the Ally 2, the Ally X. X is way cooler, and it will be launching in the second half of this year, and it will be formally announced on June 2nd. Hey, that's when Computex is. It will cost more, and it will still use the same screen and processor. Wait, really? Yeah, the same AMD Z1 Extreme chipset and the same 7-inch 120Hz variable refresh rate screen per The Verge, but it will be black instead of white, which I actually think is a good idea for a handheld gaming device. It might have more than 16 gigs of memory, but we're not sure how much. It should have a longer M.2 slot, not sure if it's 2280 or not, and it'll have one main functional upgrade with a 30 to 40% higher capacity battery, which is also a good idea for a handheld gaming device. Hopefully the ROG Ally X will be better received than the ASUS announcement video for the ROG Ally X, which started late, was an hour long, and shared barely any more information than what I have just shared in the past minute. How efficient. But there you have it, guys. Tech news for the week, and if you liked it, click that like button or leave me a comment down below. While you're down there, all the articles I talked about today are linked in the video's description if you're interested, and you can check out my store at paulshardware.net for high-quality merchandise, t-shirts, hoodies, beer sets, and more. Subscribing to my channel is always a good call too. Thanks again, everyone, and we'll see you next week.